We're back with another dilemma. Hi, everyone. I'm Emma
And I'm Brian
Burns.
Burns.
And today
And
we have a special guest, Teresa.
yes, we have Teresa, and she is a recruiter. She's been recruiting since 2007, so a few years of this. Everything from agency to corporate, recruiting for all different types of roles, anything from healthcare to sales. But sales, she tells me, is by far her favorite. Um, and she specialized in HR sales recruiting for over 5 years. Um, Teresa's currently at Sequoia, which is a benefit and HR consulting company. And in her spare time, she likes to get some sleep because she has a 3-year-old and a 9-month-old. And that doesn't, typically allow her to get too much sleep. So when she can, she's on it. Teresa, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate having you here.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for inviting me.
You got it. So today we wanted to ask you some questions. We did an episode kind of on how we work with recruiters from kind of a candidate's perspective. And so we wanted to kind of get you on to talk about sort of your perspective from a recruiter's side of things. And maybe we could start off with just sort of, what do you look for when you're looking for candidates for a particular opportunity?
Well, outside of like the standard location and, years of experience that are being required for that role or that level or that company, quite honestly, I'm looking for salespeople who have been at a company for a little while, right? Outside of the other things going on in the world and layoffs and those kinds of things that we can't control. I'm looking for somebody who's had some longevity at a company in their past and isn't necessarily running from anything or looking because they're not successful in their current role. And you're not going to know that until you talk to someone. But those are the things that I'm really honestly looking for. We want the best of the best. The sales roles that we have at these various companies that I've recruited for have a big learning curve because you're not likely coming from the exact same industry. Maybe you're selling into HR, but you have a new product to learn. So we want the sales acumen to already be there.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So you're looking, they always say, passive candidates are, recruiter sort of perfect scenario. Is that true?
Yeah, passive candidates are great because they really take the time to understand the role to see if it is really what they're looking for their next move, right? They're not like, oh, I need something and I don't care what it is. I just need something. They're happy and they're probably very successful, and it's going to take the perfect role to get them to leave. So passive is great. I would say right now it's probably 75-25. Like I have 75% passive candidates, and then the economy is in nothing like I've seen it, the past couple of years. So I have a few people who unfortunately were a part of a layoff at some kind of company, but they're still equally picky, which is nice. And you can tell by those conversations that they're looking for something that they are passionate about, that they're excited to sell, and that fits their buckets of wanting to make an impact and care about the role that they're in.
Okay.
That's interesting because I've always wondered why passive employees, I guess you call them, are so valuable or so sought after by recruiters. And I kind of understood it just from the standpoint of you don't smell the desperation on them when applying and when going through the process. But I guess just what you touched on as well, that they take more time to dive into the role and make sure it's a good fit and worth leaving the company that they're currently at and make that transition. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Probably more stickiness, right? Because they're not just taking it because they need something.
Right, because things, sales is sometimes hard to ramp up in, unless you're coming from an exact competitor and all you need to do is learn the product. Like sales, there's a lot of moving parts. And if you aren't totally in love with the role that you've accepted, there's going to be a lot of easy ways to just back out of the opportunity and go find something else. And that's kind of what I'm looking for when I'm talking to candidates. Like, okay, why'd you leave after a year and a half? Why'd you leave after 2 years? Is it because it was just got too hard and so you wanted to find something else?
Right.
That mentality is tough to sell to my hiring manager, which is part of my job, right? When things
Yeah.
get hard, they just want to leave. Well, this job is hard. Most sales jobs are hard. I've never seen an easy sales job. So
No.
you got to be super resilient.
So is that how the process works then? Like say you have a really, you see a candidate you find very valuable and could be very successful at the company, and then you go to your hiring manager and you're almost selling that person to them to then get the interview and continue on?
Absolutely. So that's why I love this role, right? Like I was in sales prior to being a recruiter, but I love recruiting because I get to have the relationships, but it's also still selling. I have to sell
Yeah.
my candidates and why my hiring managers who barely have time, right, to do all the things on their plate should take the 4 or 5 hours it takes to get somebody through a recruiting process. So I'm selling my candidate when I'm doing a write-up based off the conversation that I had. I'm sending resume, LinkedIn profile, all the notes from my conversation. And I'm essentially putting together like this executive kind of like profile of why they should take the time to interview the candidate that I found.
So you're selling internally, but you're also selling those passive candidates on taking a look, right? And having a conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then
That's the hardest part is getting
and then
them
you're
to
being
get on the
sold
call.
you're being sold to as well by candidates that want to come to work there that maybe aren't necessarily qualified or that
Yeah.
you hadn't reached out to first. So you've got
Yeah.
kind of all different angles.
Yeah, that's what makes it fun and interesting, right? I mean, there's a lot of candidates out there who would accept a job if I gave them an offer, but everyone always says, they're looking for the purple unicorn or the purple squirrel, which is like the golden candidate. I know, right?
I never heard that one before. That's good.
Yeah,
They
I
say
mean,
in
it's
sales like the unicorn deal.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's kind of what I'm doing is looking for the perfect culture fit, the perfect person who can do the job the best, that's been successful in the past, is going to have like the smallest learning curve, is going to hit the ground running, all of those things.
Yeah.
And in most cases, we have to bend in something because there is no perfect person. It's just finding out where we can bend to set the business and the candidate up for success.
Mhm.
So if you don't mind me asking, has there ever been someone who has reached out to you and been like, I really want a position here, and has thoroughly impressed you enough to kind of move forward above your passive candidates, I guess.
Yeah, I get
Passive.
people who reach out to me all the time and they do a great job of selling themselves, which is part of what I want to see, right? Like
Yeah.
during the process, you kind of have to think of the company and the recruiter as, your client, and you're selling yourself instead of a product. So I want to see great follow-up. I want to see pertinent information. I want somebody who spends time understanding the process and is proactive about the process and is sharing with me the information they think I want to hear. So I want to see all your awards and all the cool things that you've done, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I've had candidates reach out to me that I probably would have not talked to, and I will absolutely, if they put in the time, give them 30, 45 minutes on my calendar. And a few of them have turned into, yeah, I think you're a great fit. I would not have seen your profile and reached out to you, but you reached out to me, and everything that you're saying is what I'm needing for the role, right? So I'm the one that's setting them up with the hiring leader that's going to go more in depth on the actual role and expectations and challenges and wins, and is going to dive deeper into the skill set. But if I like how they're selling, their relationship style, if they're a culture fit, If they have all of the right boxes that need to be checked on the front end, absolutely, I'll send somebody through like that.
Nice. So let me ask you this. One of the things that you mentioned and, that I was curious about is what are you looking for in terms of successes? Are you looking at those president's clubs? Are you looking at how many times they made quota or missed quota? What are some of the criteria that you use to narrow those candidates down?
Yeah, the awards, President's Club, Circle of Champions, all of those things, absolutely, because that means that somebody has found a way to be successful in their role. Now, is it apples to apples with what we're selling? In most cases, no. So what that tells me is they're going to find a way to be successful. When I look at quota, I mean, I came from a company where nobody hit quota. There were 60 reps and 3 people hit quota. So if I didn't already know that about that company, then I'm essentially saying everyone in that sales force is a bad seller. I know that not to be true because I worked there. So quota is something I look at, but I want to know more about the quota. What was it? How many deals did it take? Where were you ranked, right? So even if you don't hit quota, but you're still ranked top 5, that tells me something, right? So I want to know more about the actual numbers, like your sales data, to help me understand the quota and how big the deals are, how long the sales cycle is, all of that. But awards, yeah, if you have awards in your past, I want to know about them because it means you've been successful somewhere and you found a way to make it happen.
How much does extracurricular awards like have any play in a candidate's value? So if they're
what's an example?
Like say that they've been, I don't know, I guess I could give my dad's example. He has been like a coach for, soccer teams along with like serving at a church, just like different things like that. I guess when you're, laying out your LinkedIn and wanting to beef it up a little bit, those are some things we do is like go into different awards, whether it's work related or not. How much do recruiters actually take a look at that and go, wow, that's like valuable over someone who has nothing else but just work history and work awards?
Yeah, I like that because I tend to work for companies that are mission driven and have a strong mission and want people who are aligned to that mission. So if you are doing some kind of community outreach or anything in the community, I think that shows that you would fit into a mission-driven organization. So I love that. I mean, plus when people are doing extra things, they're probably very motivated people, right? So
yeah,
it's a good point.
I mean, I love it. It's not a requirement, but it doesn't hurt.
Right. Okay. So let me ask you this. This is something I've often wondered because, on LinkedIn, you get those notifications that you've had so many people looking at your profile or whatever. Is this done through some electronic method? Is there bots or something that go out and look at all these different, do you have a way of narrowing down people to actually click on? Because I imagine you're not just thumbing through, it's got to be, or scrolling through.
Well, you are scrolling through. I spent a lot of my time sourcing, but there's different ways to narrow the search. Like I can pick the companies that I'm interested looking at, right? And I can pick if they're either there or have been there. I can pick cities, I can pick countries, I can put in keywords, I can do Boolean searches of like, it has to say benefits and payroll, right? So there has to be those 2 words in their profile somewhere. And then it will pull up a list and I can save them into like different searches. So if I'm searching for a BDR or an account executive, I can have separate searches for both of those. And then I have to thumb through the one that I'm doing right now has like 817 people in it. I'm not reaching out to 817 people. So I want to go through and find, who's been in a sales role for 5+ years in their background, who's, and then I start being pickier.
So is that just through searches through LinkedIn or do you have a special?
Yeah, that's through LinkedIn Recruiter. That's like the easiest way to do it because most people are putting their information on LinkedIn. There's other ways to do searches. There's a million tools to use, but I think most people are most active on LinkedIn. So that's like the most up to date.
That's interesting. So that's pretty much where you find candidates is on LinkedIn these days.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Sort of
Hmm.
what I thought, but you never know.
Mhm.
I mean, it used to be really long time ago. There was a thing called the newspaper, and they post,
They post
advertisements for
ads.
just,
Post the ads
yeah.
on the newspaper. Can't imagine a world like that.
Just circle the
Now
ones that
on
you're
LinkedIn,
interested
you
in.
can literally like swipe left and swipe right on LinkedIn for profiles. I'm like, well, this is new. This isn't
Wow.
this.
It's
I
like
know.
Tinder, but for
But for work.
but for work. That's hilarious.
That's
I actually
awesome.
never understood, yeah, like your question, just how they reach out to you, because I just even starting in the BDR role, I went to my dad one day. I'm like, are these real? Like, I'm just getting all of these people asking me if I want different jobs. And the reason I couldn't believe it is because I had spent so much time like applying to all these positions and sales, and I had the same amount of experience. I had, the same amount of education that I had prior, but it wasn't until I got into my role that I started getting this influx of people who are like, "Hey, like come here, come here." And he's like, "Yeah, like they're real." But it was, yeah, just crazy to me that they just,
Yeah, you started, working at your company and
yep.
somebody has that in their filter. And as soon as you started working there, you started showing up on probably a lot of the competitors' lists of people to reach out to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let me ask this question. We know that, in today's world, things like diversity and equity and inclusion are very important to companies. They want to make sure that they're, fulfilling that, I don't know if you want to call it a requirement, but like they want to be diverse. They want to have a diverse workforce. How much does that play into your searching? I mean, is that something that you have to um, search for, or is it, or
Or
is
does
that does
that
that
like
even
beat
play
it?
into it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely plays into it. It always has. For me, I think diversity is huge. I mean, I started working at TD Ameritrade a long time ago, and diversity there was just finding women to work in financial services. And it's changed over the years, and it's always been something that I've cared about, just as a woman wanting to have a presence in like the man's world, right? And in HCM, it's kind of similar. There's a lot of men in the HCM HR industry. And so of course I'm always looking for diverse candidates, and whether that's a diverse background, diverse, thought, diversity in general is just going to make everybody better. So I'm always looking for that. I
Okay.
spend time understanding the current team landscape and what kind of diversity they need, and I will spend time focusing on that. But when it comes down to it, I mean, it has to be the right candidate and they have to have the right experience. So I can't choose people just based on diversity that doesn't make sense for the role that I'm hiring into.
Right.
But if there's, 10 candidates and 5 of them are diverse, I'm going to talk to every single one of them and give everybody a shot,
Right. Yeah, I wondered if, because I think part of the diversity thing, it comes into play when, and I don't know how this works necessarily today, but when when a company is advertising for a particular role,
Mhm.
sometimes they can narrow or minimize the diversity by where they're advertising for that, right?
And
So
the language they use in the job description can
yeah, there's
absolutely knock people out.
so many factors that kind of maybe minimize
Yep.
the broadness of who will even see the
Yep.
opportunity or
Yep.
be interested in it. So I wonder if that is something maybe in the filters and the searches that you're doing, you're able to broaden that search to a point where
Yeah. Yep. I mean, I
you're
can
getting.
look nationwide. I mean, I have a bachelor's degree requirement that sometimes knocks some people out because maybe they just didn't have the opportunity to attend, a university or college. So that is tricky. I think that, is limits a little bit of the diverse candidates that I could find, but I'm open nationwide, so I can search anywhere. And my roles are not posted on anywhere online. So we do all of our sourcing and outreach from internal, like recruiters are doing all of that. So you can't actually apply online.
Okay, interesting.
That is interesting. I have a question when it comes to recruiting. So, well, this whole thing is about recruiting, but getting noticed by a recruiter, I'll say that way. So what if you are a BDR and like you said, a lot of recruiters, they have different settings where they can do a BDR role versus an AE role. But what if you're a BDR looking for an AE role, but no one's reaching out to you because you're BDR and they're looking to hire you for another BDR role? What would be your suggestion for making your LinkedIn or just, I don't know, just making yourself known or trying not to get set in that one setting?
That's a tricky one. That's like, how do I get experience without somebody giving me the option to do it? Right. Like
That's
that
exactly
is
what
so tricky.
it is.
I want to move up. I want to move up market, or I want to advance my career. But until somebody gives me a chance, I don't even get the experience. It's difficult, right? Like professional development is a sticky subject for everybody who wants to take that leap. I would do all the extra things in your current role. I would go shadow the role that you want to be in. I would ask for additional responsibilities that borderline like doing as much of that job that you can without actually being promoted into that role. I would internally use every single resource possible to get the amount of experience that you think you need in order to add a few things to your LinkedIn profile, right? So we can search for keywords. So in your BDR role, if you're setting those appointments, right, and you're calling people and you're getting leads to the AEs, you might want to like see if there's any way you can join a sales motion and be involved through the process. I don't know if they offer that, but like that's how you're going to get that little bit of experience.
Yep.
And then that's how you're going to like edge your way into that next role until either you get promoted at your current company because you're doing all this extra work and you're going above and beyond, and then they just promote you, or a smaller company looks at your profile and says, sure, like we will give you a shot, like absolutely. So I think that's navigating that is like the most difficult part, right? Because how do you move into leadership without leadership experience? Like you ask for additional responsibilities and then you either get promoted in your current role or you find a little bit of a smaller company that's going to let you cut your teeth in that role, spend a couple of years doing it there, go back to a larger company if a larger company is where you want to be.
Or maybe even wouldn't it also apply a similar type of approach would be if I'm a BDR for major accounts, maybe I try for a sales role in small business.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah.
Or same thing. Like I think the ladder from where I work currently is you start at like a BDR for majors and then enterprise and large enterprise and then hopefully sales role for emerging and so on and so forth. But
absolutely.
So definitely an internal type of approach, but as well as like you said, like just taking on more responsibility
and find someone to champion for you. Find somebody on the large enterprise team that is really proud of, your skill set and will champion for you, because that's going to be like the loudest voice at the table is somebody successful in the organization saying, Emma's done great things or Brian's done great things. And I totally would put my name on this person. That's the stamp of approval that everyone should get.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think you already answered this, but I'll just let you maybe reiterate. But how important is it to keep your LinkedIn profile up to date as
Yeah,
a potential candidate?
totally. And put a picture up there, right? Like make it
Like
as
one
if
from 15 years ago when I was
I don't care. Sure. One from when
really?
you were in
Oh,
college. I mean, it doesn't matter. Like what you look like, it doesn't matter. What it says is I'm engaged. I'm
okay.
engaged. I'm going to show up. I'm going to put my best effort in. I'm going to be proactive. Like all of those things. Like I'm here to do my best to get this job. Right. So it doesn't have to, you don't just spend 6 hours like putting it together and like all of that, but it should look like you want the job. It should look like you care enough about it, right? Like it's really the new resume. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
you wouldn't just do the same font with, no indentations and no, you just wouldn't put a resume together that you wouldn't handwrite it, right? Like this is the new resume.
I
So
think
that go ahead, Emma.
I was just gonna say, I think that's such a great point because we often like to think of sales like you're selling, like it's your own little business, and you are selling a product, you're putting a name on a product, and you're trying to sell it to someone. And just like you would your website, if you owned a product and you want people to buy your product from your website, you keep it up to date so they know what's new and they know what's worth looking at or worth buying from you. I think it's important to update your resume and make sure that the people who are looking at it know like where you're working, what you're doing, that you haven't, quit a company 5 years ago and there's like no track of that, and so on and so
I
forth.
say all the time, like when I'm hiring salespeople, the one thing that you should be able to sell no matter what, without question, is yourself.
Yeah.
If you can't do that, if you can't sell yourself to me, then I'm concerned you're not gonna be able to learn my product and sell that, right? Because
True.
you are the only person who knows every single thing about what you've done, what you know, what you care about, why you're looking. So part of that is packaging your product in a way that like is appetizing to the people who are buying it, right? So
Yep.
So that leads to my question I was going to ask as a follow-up to LinkedIn. How important is it? Like, do you recommend getting your resume done professionally? Is it really that critical anymore since it is pretty much LinkedIn?
I don't even
Or
get resumes until like halfway through the process anymore. I mean, a resume really is your LinkedIn on a piece of paper, but I don't even get pieces of paper anymore. Like I used to physically get resumes and like the ones on like the fancy paper, like, oh, that was cool,
yeah,
I put them at the top. But now, I mean, truly, resumes are just your LinkedIn profile in a text format. And there may be some additional things on there, but I'm going to get all of that through a conversation. So there's nothing on a resume that I'm not going to uncover in a call. It's something that I can add to your file. I think it's great. It's like more, collateral to sell yourself, but I don't even ask for it till I'm closer to the end. I'm like, oh, I have to get your resume. Let's grab that. Like
yeah,
everything
and I
else is
wonder, I wonder how much of those are just being uploaded into, a website, candidate website for the company versus having to look pretty.
yeah, I mean, it's just a part of your file, really.
Okay.
It's something that we have if we ever need to reference it, but you don't really ever reference it. I mean, all of the things that are on a resume, I'm asking and getting my own clarification on. But it's
Okay.
also on in LinkedIn too, right? Like there's nothing on your resume that you can't put on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
I think you
that's
can put more on LinkedIn really because
Absolutely.
like
but
Emma mentioned, you can put things like, hey, I volunteer as a soccer coach, and that shows,
Mhm.
shows
yeah.
leadership and things like that.
Mhm.
Um, but you wouldn't put that on the resume.
But that's interesting because I always heard in college that um we even had to take a whole class on resumes and building our resumes. And it was all because when a recruiter is like getting a whole bunch of resumes in, they search up keywords and you don't want 2 pages, you don't want too much fluff in there because they just want to look for specific words in order to know who moves forward. Well, that's, I'm guessing, kind of what your LinkedIn is, and people just putting on settings like what exactly they're looking for. And so, yeah, I guess it's just extremely important to keep your LinkedIn up to date rather than.
So my old ATS at my company 2 companies ago, starts with a C, didn't have, you could not upload LinkedIn profiles into the ATS. However, the few that I've been using since leaving there, when you apply, right, or I put your information into the system, it uploads your LinkedIn profile right into where your resume would be. So I can pull up both. So I can pull up Brian Burns and I can see a resume, a LinkedIn profile. I can pull up Emma, I see resume and LinkedIn profile. So it's the same thing, right? You can link your LinkedIn to an application now. So it really is the same thing.
So here's another question I think that a lot of people are wonder is, if I'm updating my LinkedIn, is this some sort of a trigger to my, red flag to my employer that, hey, Brian's out looking for something?
I don't know how that works, honestly. Like, you can change your picture to say open to work. That would be visible to everybody. So like, Emma, if you put open to work, everyone in the world would see that, right?
Yeah.
However,
are you talking about the one that goes around your picture? Because I think there's also a trigger, right? Like a toggle that you can turn on and off. And I just always have left mine on so I don't have to.
Yeah. So the only people who are going to see that are people with LinkedIn recruiter seats. So recruiters. Now, typically you're not searching for people who already work at your company. So in all of my searches, I like X out Sequoia. Like, if you work at Sequoia, don't show up in my search because you already work here and I'm not trying to recruit you. So I don't even see Sequoia people in any of my searches. So they would have to go looking for it to see if you've done that. But I mean, we don't do that. We're not in the space to like out people for looking for jobs. Like, I don't know any recruiter that's like creeping on current employees. I
mean, that's good to know about recruiters, but you wonder, like, is my boss gonna think?
Well, they would have to have LinkedIn recruiter, and that's a very expensive seat, like per person and so they probably don't have it.
Okay. That's good to know. I mean, I think it's important to keep up to date even as a professional. Like, when I'm meeting with a new prospective client, I want them to go on and see, hey, Brian has been, in this industry for 15 years and he's had, success, which means that knows what he's doing and he's helping companies. And here's some of the companies that, I mean, I even have clients that will go on and write recommendations about me.
And so you can't do that with a resume. Like, the recommendations are awesome on LinkedIn, and seeing who you're connected to, right? So it's like, oh, they're connected to 3 people that work here. That's awesome. Like, we should see if somebody wants to have a conversation with them about this role, or if they already have, or hey, he's connected to 40 people that work here. Like, clearly they run in the same circles. He must know what we're doing here. So yeah,
that's good. Emma, do you have anything else?
No, I think my mind is blown. No, I think you answered a lot of my questions, and I think it is just great intel as to what the other side looks like, because as we mentioned in the beginning, we're normally the ones applying, not understanding how the process works behind the scenes, especially as times change. And like you said, LinkedIn becomes your primary source to recruit. So yeah, I think you answered all of our questions and beyond, and we really
Is there any
appreciate
question that we didn't ask you that we should know
I
about?
would say, like, other things that I think are really important is, if you know somebody at that company, like, for sure, go to them first and try to be submitted as like a referral. Because that's gold at any company, right? If somebody's going to put their stamp of approval on you, like, that's way better than some person I've never ever talked to before, right? Like, a known entity is way better than just a random candidate that I found, right? The other thing is your recruiter should be your advocate. So you should lean on your recruiter to talk about the process, to talk about feedback, to talk about preparing for the next steps. Don't think of your recruiter as somebody who's like vetting you in every conversation and could immediately be like, oh, we're off, right? Like, I don't like that person anymore. Build a relationship with your recruiter. If you are actively looking and you really want to work at a company, let them be your advocate, and then also rely on them for feedback through the process.
Yeah,
Because
that's
we want you to be successful through the process just as much as you do, right? Like, our job is to find homes for people and hopefully extend an offer and have them love the role, be successful, be happy. Like, it's truly the best spot in HR. I get to like give happiness all day, right? And usually it's a very important part of people's lives is their work. So use your recruiter as like somebody to help you get through the process and to help and coach you through the process too.
That's good. I always say, like, even when I'm not looking and I get hit up by a recruiter, I always respond. I always reply, because I hate it as a salesperson when I'm reaching out to somebody and they just don't reply to me. I'll at least get back to them and say, hey, the timing isn't good for me right now.
Right.
I'm not in a position to make a move, but appreciate, you reaching out, and let's stay in touch, because, there may
you
be
never
a day.
know.
And,
You
never know. The person could, you guys could be in touch 2 jobs from now. And, like, we typically stay in the same industry. So you never know when you're going to meet that person again.
Yep. That's good. Emma, did you want to close it with some kind of interesting question for us, or what do you think?
I don't have a question.
You got nothing?
No.
Do you want to just share? You were just recently on a trip. Do you want to share your favorite spots that you hit while you were vacationing?
Yeah, I think I already shared it with you too, but I enjoyed Positano and Lauterbrunnen on my trip.
And what was it? Why? What was the reason?
Positano, just because it's beautiful. I don't know what to say about it. I mean, it looked like a postcard. And Lauterbrunnen, because I think Jungfrau is like the top of Europe. So it's like the tallest peak or mountain in Europe, and we got to see the waterfall that came like right off of it. I forget the waterfall's name, but it was magical. So
Didn't you see the Matterhorn mountain as well?
I did. What surprised me about the Matterhorn was that there's an entire ride at Disney that Walt Disney made after seeing this Matterhorn in Switzerland, and it's the only ride that does not have any correlation to anything Disney. So it made me think, you know what, this is something special, and it was. So that's pretty cool.
That is cool.
Interesting.
Do you want to, Teresa? You want to share your favorite vacation spot that you've been to?
Oh,
Travel
boy.
destination?
Well, I kind of live in paradise. I live in Florida, so
Florida is paradise. I lived there during my internship, and I was just
South Florida is nice, and I'm from Nebraska, so anywhere near water is like cool to me. But Hawaii was cool. I went to Hawaii, and I thought that was fun. Like, I love staying in the States. Like, yes, traveling the world is cool, but with 2 kids, that's never going to happen. Well, not for a while, but I want to like see all the states, right? Like, I'm interested in just like knowing as much about the US as I can. So I've been to multiple states, and I think Hawaii is just special for sure.
Hawaii, I agree with you. Hawaii.
I said that. Wait, remember you called me and you're like, what is it like there? Or like, is it as beautiful as whatever, most beautiful place you've visited? I'm like, honestly, like this and Hawaii are my favorite place. Like, they would be equal in my mind, because Hawaii is just stunning.
Yeah, and just so special. The culture there is so cool, and that's
so
what I.
Yeah, that is so true.
And as you mentioned, you're still in the United States. You don't have to have your passport and all that stuff.
Right.
They speak the language, same currency. You don't have to deal with all that stuff. And it's only Well, for me, it's only a 5-hour flight or something like that,
Yeah.
but a little further for you from Florida.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I would say my favorite vacation spot was I have two. One was Australia. That
Mm,
was a pretty fun one. A lot of that was because of the family that we were visiting. So it was like a fun trip for two different, you get to see the
yeah.
culture and the kangaroos and all that fun stuff, but then also got to spend it with family. And then Venice was pretty neat. I went to Venice
Yeah.
years ago and that was fun. So those are mine. But well, thank you. I guess we'll
Yeah.
wrap it with
Thank you
that.
so
And thanks
much.
for joining us. That was
Yeah.
really helpful. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah, of course. Well, thanks for having me.
You're
All right.
welcome. Bye.